Basketball, football, baseball. From Division I to Division III, it's time for College Sports Weekly with Don Macholis and Dan Underberg on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network.
Better than mine. I got a packed house yelling, bring them out, bring them out. I'm a hot girl yelling, bring them out, bring them out. All the dope boys yelling, bring them out, bring them out. Cut the black day yelling, bring them out, bring them out. Mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2.
All right, welcome in. It's College Sports Weekly right here on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network. Don Wichulis along with Charlie Usen. Charlie, the professor needed 2 weekends to celebrate the 250th birthday of our fine country. So our friend has the day off. He'll be back with us. You can't understand how the professor rolls until you experience another get together.
He seems like a professional leisurer. That's what I'm getting out of this. Yeah. I don't know if that's a word or if I
even if you just made it up, Charlie, it's absolutely fine because it fits. And the professor again will be back with us next week. Now, we have ourselves an abbreviated show because Pittsburgh and other fine places throughout Major League Baseball have built stadiums without retractable domes, and the game last night got rained out. So with all of that being said, at 11 o'clock, we will transition. I'm going to ride Charlie's coattails, and we're going to do the Brewer pregame show.
Leadoff show,
The leadoff show, excuse me, and get you ready for Brewers Pirates doubleheader Saturday. So an abbreviated college sports show, which then bleeds into some Brewer baseball, and then some form of normalcy will take place after that. In a moment, we'll get into the Sean Eichhorst era has begun at the University of Wisconsin, a new athletic director named over the last couple of weeks since we were here doing this program. Corey Borchert, the commissioner of the WIAC, is slated to join us at around 9:25, and then we've got some things in the hopper, so to speak, working as we speak to see if we may get ourselves another guest, again, with the Brewers being rained out yesterday. Dean Herman, the softball head coach and athletic operations coordinator at Bryan and Stratton College, was slated to join us in the second hour. We're going to see if we can't get Dean here in our number one. Whew. With all of that said, let's get into the big news that came out of Madison, and that's that the Sean Eichhorst era has begun as athletic director. And it was amazing to me the spin immediately that gets put on the hirings once they happen. And we haven't even allowed Sean the opportunity to get into the chair, get the seat warm, and see how things happen. But the opinions begin to fly again immediately once the hire takes place. So it became official again that he would be replacing Chris McIntosh. Immediately, you have those out there that said, it's the safe hire. We have no idea other than the athletic director, Charlie, at Arizona, whose name was leaked in the midst of the 3 to 5 finalists that were a part of the interviewing process in Madison. Eichhorst obviously has the Wisconsin connection, been a born and raised Badger, shall we say, and then also the fact that he was an athletic director at Nebraska, an athletic director at Miami, but then has essentially spent what I'll say just shy of the last decade as a chief operations officer with Texas. And that, to me, had to be one of the selling points in bringing Sean in as athletic director, is that you have been a part of one of the major Division I programs and observing how this transition has taken place. Chris McIntosh, as I've said before, I think his downfall was simply the fact that he gets hired as AD and seemingly the next day, the college landscape absolutely flipped on its head. It went a complete 180. So you're grooming somebody to step into the chair, so to speak, and do things the way we've done, as Barry Alvarez had did it. And then all of a sudden, it's that model doesn't work in the new model that has taken over college athletics. And I think That's what hurt Chris McIntosh. I think Chris McIntosh is going to be fine once he goes to the Big Ten. And I think people at the Big Ten are going to look around and go, why are people so angry and upset with Chris McIntosh in Wisconsin? I don't think it's with Chris. I just think it was the landscape. So the fact that Sean Eichhorst is hired as the new AD and got to observe one of the best in this new era, I'm good with the hire.
He's also still a Barry guy, though. Obviously,
he is.
Like, clearly,
absolutely. Isn't it amazing still how much influence Barry Alvarez has?
It's so dumb. And I get you have to have that influence because he's the reason a lot of these donors are still giving money to the University of Wisconsin.
Truth.
At the same time, when you've seen it not work out over the past few years with McIntosh, before then, you just see the decline of what a Barry-led university, a Barry-led football program has started to become because of the way that the landscape of college sports has shifted so much. And I think what we've heard from Sean Eichhorst in his introductory press conference makes me somewhat excited. He seems like he loves the university, but Chris McIntosh seemed like he loved the university. Seems like this guy understands both football and basketball, and that he's going to be able to work with both sides of the two major sports at the school. At the same time, I felt like Chris McIntosh was going to be able to go in and do that too. And I understand that the basketball program has had the moderate success that it's had, but you need to start taking a next step with that. The football team clearly needs to start taking a next step now that Luke Fickell is going towards kind of that end of his tenure. If they can't figure it out at this point here, you need a lot of movement to start happening now that we're this deep into the NIL era. And because this is what feels like another Barry Alvarez guy, as much as I'm excited that this guy understands that world a little bit better, I'm not convinced 100% that he's going to change everything as quick as possible.
I don't know how quickly things are going to change. And I think he mentioned that in his opening press conference in talking about Texas. We look at Texas in its immediacy that has risen up the ranks once again to be a prominent force in football and basketball, women's volleyball, very good down at Texas. It's going to take a hot minute. So it's going to need, on our part, a bit of patience. However, I think we could at some point, and maybe we'll save this discussion for when the professor's here, in the fact that what were the resources allocated under Chris McIntosh? We now know we're getting a new president, a new chancellor. We now have the new athletic director in place. Remember that about a month ago? What did we spend a half hour arguing about what the order should be as far as the hiring goes? Well, Daniel was right. I hate to admit it, but he was. They went with the athletic director, and then they're going to move on from there. However, the old leadership team, I don't think fully grasped, again, what was taking place on the athletic side. It was academics, right? We've seen chancellor and president now bolt for Ivy League-like schools. So the embracement of the academics is great because that's the mass of the university. The athletic department now is almost on an island in and of itself in this new NIL era. And I don't know if the heads of the former regime understood that. So I think an argument could be made for both Luke Fickell, and people will say, well, what about Greg Gard? Different element. You don't have the same monstrosity as far as the sport goes, right? You don't have 70 guys and everything else that goes into running a football program, basketball. I think there could be an argument that while Chris McIntosh was there, his hands were a bit strapped, so to speak, because of the fact that the upper management, I'll call them that, the chancellor and the president, didn't provide him with the resources that other universities, a Texas again, since we've got this correlation now, was providing. Let's take, this will be clip number one. Charlie, let's hear from Sean Eichhorst in his opening press conference this past week.
There's swag at Texas, right? There's 30 million people in Texas. And so, we got swag too, but we have a little humility with that deal. But we need to get our shoulders up, right? We need to feel good about what it is that we're doing. And gosh, if you can't feel good about this place and what we offer, I get it. We're judged by the left column and the right column. I mean, I get that. Our coaches get that, but this is a special place. And so the similarities, pretty much stop there. And then, we all do things distinctly different. But that opportunity to be immersed in that the alignment of leadership. There's a great alignment in leadership, right? And that's really important on how you steady and steer a university of this repute. And so those are the things that are special and the things that carry over here.
These are 2 points from that remark that I think stood out. One is tongue-in-cheek, Wisconsin swag. If the PR department at Wisconsin is not printing T-shirts as we speak, for the opening game, to hand every student a T-shirt that says hashtag Wisconsin swag on it.
Or you could so easily do got our swag back, change the W with the Wisconsin W and swag.
Look
and
at you.
It's right there. It's
Look
easy.
at the kid. He's already in the marketing department here at the station. But I heard that and I'm like, there you go. That's game one, not the Lambeau game, the home game at Camp Randall. Every student that walks in, I like your idea even better. Way to capitalize on that one, Charlie. But hand out those T-shirts. The other thing I think goes back to what we were talking about going into that sound clip was the fact that even Sean talks about the alignment of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was disjointment with the old regime. And I think, again, that's what hurt Chris McIntosh. Now, I don't want to be an apologist, but I don't think if we go 5-6 years down the road and look back and do it truthfully and also take the emotion. That's what happens in the immediacy, right? We throw the emotion into it and, oh my God, I can't believe what he did. Let's run him out of town. But then we look back and we see what happened during his time frame. And we see some of the things that he put in place. Mm-hmm. Now, again, Luke Fickell was the guy when the opening existed. Yes, we can talk about Leonard and we can talk about some of the other candidates, but Luke Fickell was the guy. And Chris McIntosh got him.
And Badgers fans, I understand people are frustrated with Luke Fickell now. You can't pretend like you weren't semi-excited when he was hired by the Wisconsin Badgers.
Yes.
Semi-excited. Most people were fully excited for Luke Fickell to come in here. It's so retrospective to go back and say, oh, yeah, that sucked. They should have gone with Leonard in the first place. They screwed Leonard over. That was bad to ruin that relationship. It doesn't matter. If you had a chance to go get the best guy on the market, you're going to go give him an offer. And it was kind of crazy that he came back to Wisconsin and said, yeah, I'll take that. Let's do this. Because I'm sure there's a lot of other big schools that were giving him a similar offer, and he chose Wisconsin. So, yes, Leonard can be mad about how that all went down, but I think if you're Jim Leonard and Ed Reed is coming to your team and saying, I want to play on this team, I want that starting spot, you're going to understand if your team gives Ed Reed that spot too.
I look at it from an HR perspective, and this is going to be his biggest goal as far as Eichhorst is, and that is always the HR spot. Mm-hmm. He's got a three-pronged approach that I think he has to look at. He's got to look at NIL. He's got to look at HR, right? The coaching piece is so important. And he's got to look at fundraising. And on any given day, one supersedes the other. It's not you can put them in order, and granted, one supersedes the other. I will say from a fundraising standpoint, McIntosh did a decent job, hence the new addition there on the east side of Camp Randall, which will be for the football team when they tear down the old McLean Center after that one is finished as far as construction goes. So there were elements, again, I think that Chris McIntosh, did well. He just got caught up in the wrong time frame. So knowing that, there's been a lot of pushback. I want to jump to number 3, Charlie, as far as our sound clips go, because if you listen to those in Nebraska, there are a lot of people in Nebraska not happy with, I shouldn't even say not happy, scratching their head about the Sean Eichhorst.
You're getting there.
I'm getting there. Holy cow. All right. This is courtesy of 97.3 The Ticket. And this is one of the comments that was made when they found out that Sean Eichhorst would be the next AD at Wisconsin.
He's going to ruffle feathers with probably a degree of incompetence. In Nebraska, you want some incompetence? You want an example of incompetence?
Yeah, please do.
Remember Black Friday? His move on Black Friday is going to be ending Black Friday.
Yep.
We're not going to play Black Friday anymore. It's not going to be Iowa.
That was Eichhorst.
And then it was, we'll play Minnesota on Black Friday. And, people, then there was the predictable uprising from the fans, and then Black Friday returned. But
again, courtesy of 97.3 The Ticket in Nebraska. here's where I think the difference lies. And Seamus Rohrer for SI did a nice job really encapsulating this well in an article that he wrote on Friday. And that's this. First of all, Sean goes into Nebraska, hired, tries to change some things up, not understanding maybe culture, tradition of the state of Nebraska. Well, take that off the byline because he's a Wisconsin guy. He understands. He's not going to come in and say, you know what, guys, last game we're not playing Minnesota anymore. That's not going to happen. Then the other thing for me is the fact that, and again, Seamus, I think, encapsulated this very well in his article, is the fact that his tenure as AD at Nebraska, his tenure as AD at Miami, that may not have gone well, Charlie, however, was almost a decade ago. And I just sat here for 3 or 4 minutes, essentially, I don't want to say apologizing for Chris McIntosh, but giving rationale as to why Chris McIntosh shouldn't be thrown into the wood chopper as quickly as people want to, because the world changed. Now, when the world changed, he, that being Eichhorst, was at Texas and got to witness a program that flipped as everything else was flipping. They rolled with it much easier than I think the Badgers did. So now, after witnessing that, after seeing what's taking place, there's an educational aspect to this. Charlie, you played college football. You probably, and I'm 100% sure of this, were a better football player your senior year than your freshman year. You grew. You learned certain things. Now, what that growth was, I'll leave that up to you to grade yourself, but there was growth there. So what I'm saying is, before we jump the gun and like, oh, look what he did at Nebraska, look what he did at Miami, the man had an opportunity to learn and grow in the new system, which to me, I think set him apart from the other candidates because there's that knowledge base. He's a Wisconsin guy as well.
For sure. And I think that background definitely gives him a little bit of an edge. I just think at the same time as, yes, he went through that process with Texas, but it's also comparing it back to me in my football playing career. If I played my 4 years at Elmhurst University, a D3 school that is one of the worst football programs in the country when I was playing there, it was a struggle to play at sometimes, but I got more opportunities. It was easier to get on the field for me personally because of that. I think then if I spent the 4 years there and then all of a sudden went to Alabama to try out for their football team, it's going to be a completely different beast for me to work through that and a harder challenge for me to work through that. I think this is kind of a similar situation where he's going from Texas, where they are just throwing money at you as much as possible, make sure that all their teams compete. It doesn't matter which one they want to make sure every team is ready to go and is going to go out there and beat all their rivals too. At Wisconsin, you're not getting the same kind of money thrown at you. You're getting people that are talking about the education and wanting to support all the other sports around football and basketball, which I think is very important. I think that's part of the reason Chris McIntosh got the job at the Big Ten, because of how successful everything else was at the university too. So when you look at Eichhorst, that's the only reservation I think I have about him, is that when you go to a situation where it's not going to be as forgiving as Texas is by just throwing money at you, how do you respond to that?
So the end result is probably 4 or 5 years down the line, which means we'll look back and find out exactly, let's say, what was being given to Chris McIntosh to make life work. What is now being given to Eichhorst to make life work. I think that will be the deciding factor. I think as much as we talk about Chris McIntosh, here's another topic that we can't get to today since we're on an abbreviated College Sports Weekly show. Did Luke Fickell, did his growth as coach at Wisconsin, was it hampered by the lack of resources from those above? And it trickles down. And I go back to what Eichhorst said in his opening press conference about the alignment, and now talking about the alignment being there at Wisconsin. I just don't think the alignment. Somebody else will write a book about that, how, you know, the academics wanted this, the athletics wanted this, and there was this chasm that was stuck in the middle that they weren't necessarily bridging together like a Texas, like an Alabama, like some of these other places that they were more into, as you just noted, the academics than the athletics. That chasm, How did that separate or hinder, in this case, a Luke Fickell? Now, as you said, Luke Fickell, hot seat, every major shall we say publication has him at 2, 3, 4. I mean, he's right there in the middle.
He finished the season last year at like 1 on most publications.
Yes.
So I think that's at least an improvement for him. We'll take it.
Fallen down a
We'll
little
take
bit.
it a little bit. Yeah.
I'm interested to see, now that they've upgraded some of the resources for the football program, what then that means as far as their success going into this year. All right, we got to get to a break. On the other side of the break, Corey Borchard, the commissioner of the WIAC, will join us. And then as we wrap up hour number 1, our only hour today, Dean Herman, head softball coach and athletic operations coordinator at Bryan and Stratton, will also jump on as we make our way to the leadoff show for the doubleheader that takes place between the Brewers and the Pirates. This is College Sports Weekly. You're listening inside the Potawatomi? Man, Charlie.
Live from the
Charlie.
Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios, powered by the Potawatomi.
God bless you,
Sports.
sir. All right, go to a break, would you? right, welcome back in College Sports Weekly. We are live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios. Don't forget, you can follow us on our social media platforms at Wisconsin Sports Radio or anywhere with the Odyssey app. Good to be back in the chair, even though I find myself stumbling and rumbling. It's like we were gone for a week, Charlie. And yeah.
Dan's going to forget English when he comes back after 2 weeks, man.
Dan is somewhere like, listen to that moron trying to do this thing by himself. Anyhow, let's get to the Nicolay Law Talk and Text line. He is the commissioner of the WIAC, Corey Borchert. Good morning, sir. Thanks for taking some time out to join us.
Good morning. Absolutely. Great to be with you, and thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. And as I said in the email, I hope this is something that we can do on a regular basis, because not only what happens on the field, but in this day and age, the administrative side of college sports has become oh so important as well. You just took over the reins officially July 1st. How has the first, we'll say few days, even though I know there was more prep into it, but officially, how have the first few days been as commissioner of the WIAC?
It's been a great start. As you said, officially about a weekend, but obviously even before that, having a lot of conversations. So doing a lot of listening, obviously trying to build relationships, getting to campuses, but we're off to a great start.
Sean, how was it Corey, in going about building those relationships and already having some of those relationships potentially established? Because someone who has been a native of our state, has it been a little bit easier, or has this been something that has started absolutely from ground zero?
No, you're absolutely right in that. Thankfully, had a lot of relationships with WIAC chancellors, athletic directors, senior women administrator, coaches prior to taking the position. Being from northern Wisconsin, Rib Lake, certainly helps as well, just having a understanding of how significant the conference is to the state, and obviously even some personal experiences with the WIAC. So able to build on that and kind of elevate off those existing relationships. Also, I've been a part of several committees within the NTA where I served with members of the WIAC, and so certainly that's given me an opportunity to build relationships as well, even before saying yes to leading a great conference.
Awesome. And that is a great leadway, because I'm looking here just over this past year. University of Wisconsin lacrosse, the men's cross country and track team national champion, the women's track team national champion, River Falls, UW River Falls football national champion, women's hockey national champion, UW Oshkosh women's volleyball national champion. So you're inheriting a conference that has been fairly dominant across the country. When you look at that, what's number one on your agenda as far as keeping the WIAC rolling in its current fashion?
On the head. We've been certainly one of the top Division III conferences, clearly a lot of national championships, and one of the key parts of our vision is continuing that and even taking that to a next step. I think we are recognized as one of the top Division III conferences consistently, and we not only want to continue that, but even become, the goal obviously is to be the top Division III conference. We're in athletics. Certainly always the goal to be on top. So we talk a lot about how do we position us as a conference to continue doing that and to keep, finding a next level. So that's a key part of our vision. I think a second part with that is we want to make sure that we are offering a premier student athlete experience. We want it to be known that at any of our 8 full member campuses, student athletes are going to have one of the premier experiences in Division III when they're there. And so we talk a lot about that experience, and it's kind of our compass or North Star when we evaluate decisions, making sure that those decisions are indeed trying to elevate, enhance, and ensure it's a premier student athlete experience.
Division three, obviously a bit different than Division one. And in Division one, we've spent a lot of time talking about the transfer portal and NIL. At the Division three level, Corey, what is, I don't want to call it a hurdle, but what's the biggest task that you find that's been placed in front of you, whether it was at the WIAC or when you were at UMAC?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think if we talk in a couple of weeks, that answer might change or be different in a few
Sure.
weeks, right? It's a evolving landscape. Obviously, Division One, the rate and the speed of their changes is probably faster than they've ever experienced. And Division Three is starting to be in that same camp as far as changes that we're having to make and continuing to evolve and figure out what it looks like, in the next chapter. And so, while yes, the NIL and the eligibility model, are first and foremost Division One in their minds, Division Three, we're actually right there too. And so those are actually two key issues, even in Division Three, that we're navigating. What do we want NIL to look like in Division Three going forward? What eligibility model do we want to continue or change and modify with in Division Three? So while the scope or some of the context is definitely different in Division Three, I think people, may be surprised. Some of the key issues right now are actually amongst all three divisions.
Corey, when you talk about the eligibility issues, for me, as someone who just loves college athletics, I think that component is something we don't hear enough about at the Division One level. We constantly hear about contracts and what players are getting paid and who's transferring. Is the eligibility component something that will kind of reassert itself even at the Division One level as we move forward and try and navigate through this entire mess?
Absolutely. I think Division One, feels like what they adopted this summer, just recently, really only a couple weeks ago. I think they feel like hopefully gives them the framework now for, a considerable amount of time to operate within. But I think as higher education changes, so does, intercollegiate athletics, just in terms of how that relates to eligibility. And so how education is offered, how it's delivered, what that looks like, now is even different than 5 years ago and 10 years ago and certainly 20 plus years ago. And so I think that eligibility model, whether that's seasons, a length of time, what does that look like? I think that's going to just keep evolving as higher ed continues to change and evolve, and how our campuses deliver the academic portion of the experience, which ultimately obviously is such a key piece. And Division Three in particular, that certainly is not changing. That's such a core part of the overall holistic experience for our athletes.
Corey, I'm going to throw one more at you. I know you're traveling. We're going to do this again and not in the midst of you trying to navigate through the North Woods and taking some time to talk with us. But one of the things that we constantly advocate on our show is the fact that we would love to see Division Three get exposed a little bit more from the media. In other words, some of the games that we see, I'll use the Four Letter Network as an example, that we have to witness, shall we say, aren't anywhere close to as good as, let's say, a Whitewater lacrosse matchup on a Saturday afternoon. Is there any talk between your conference and other conferences of pushing a way to get the product more into the national spotlight?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll speak for the WIAC, I guess, initially. I think my sense would be every conference, or most certainly, are trying to explore opportunities where they can get their product and their brand out, in a wider audience. So I'm sure others are in the same, but specific to the WIAC, that's one of my key priorities quickly in terms of, with me starting, trying to explore, cultivate, develop, cement opportunities where we can really, I'm going to be selfish for a minute and say the WIAC brand, obviously all of Division Three would be great as well. But in terms of WIAC, absolutely trying to explore opportunities both within the state, regionally, and nationally. And I think our division has done, better in terms of recent years, just being able to get more of our championships, even on the four-letter word, as you termed it, or other, platforms with a larger audience. But for our conference, I think that's a key part. We know the WIAC brand is strong, but I still think there's opportunities where we can use that brand and visibility-wise, try to even expand, whether that's through television, whether that's through streaming, whether that's through social media platforms and other kind of digital platforms. That whole space just continues to evolve, and we want to try to have a larger presence in it. Absolutely.
Corey, appreciate the time. Drive safe, would you please? And we'll check back in once we get knee deep into the football season.
That would be great. I think we're just over about 50 days away from fall sports first contest starting up, so it'll be here fast, and look forward to that.
All right, thank you so much. That's Corey Borchert, the commissioner of the WIAC, joining us on the Nicolay Law Talk and Text line. Before we get to a break, a quick shout out. Member guests going on at Morningstar Golf Course. I understand there's a few speakers enjoying our fine program this morning. Nice. So good luck to everybody out there in the midst of a beautiful day. And wherever, maybe you're golfing while you're listening as well, wherever that may be, I hope you're having yourselves a great Saturday. We'll take our last break in abbreviated College Sports Weekly. At the top of the hour, I get to join Charlie for the Brewer leadoff show, the baseball leadoff show, as we get ready for a doubleheader between the Pirates and the Brewers. So we get to talk some Brewer baseball at the top of the hour. But after this break, when we come back, Dean Herman, the head softball coach and athletics operations coordinator at Bryan and Stratton College, is slated to join us, and we will do it next. It's College Sports Weekly, live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. got a little Elvis bringing us back.
This is
in on a
Tommy
Saturday.
or Sparky's bumpers because like we're a little abbreviated. We switched it
Yeah.
up, so I threw Sparky's on. He's got a little
Nice.
rubbernecking
A little,
on.
a little EP bringing us back after a break. This is College Sports Weekly. We are live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios. We are powered by the Potawatomi Sports Book. Let's jump to the Nicolay Law talk and text line. He is the head softball coach at Bryan and Stratton, Dean Herman. Dean, good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Glad to have you on, and thank you so much for kind of rearranging your Saturday schedule. We can blame the Brewers. So it's all baseball related here, Dean, but we can blame the
You
Brewers for being rained out yesterday. You've had an incredible run so far at Bryan and Stratton. 195 and 105 is the overall record in your tenure. How is it as you've moved through the ranks? You've obviously, if you look at Dean's bio, done stuff at the high school level. You've done the traveling, the, under 17, under 18 type leagues that take place throughout the summer. And now having this tenure at Bryan and Stratton. What has been the growth for you as a coach at the collegiate level in relation to those past experiences?
One of the things is, I thoroughly love recruiting. So, at the high school level, you're kind of given your team based on the parameters of your district. And kind of the same thing when it goes to your club teams. You are out there, you have your tryouts, but it's whoever comes to you. So the difference is I love getting out there. I'm at tournaments every weekend. And I just love being among the athletes that are out there and kind of just being able to choose my team based on kind of the culture that we want to build at Bryan Stratton.
That's an interesting perspective, because you're right. At the high school level, it's who shows up as freshmen, right? And then trying to meld them into the system. So in the midst of recruiting for Bryan and Stratton, is there a major sell to it? I'll say it that way, because I don't know how many athletes would think about a junior college experience, in the midst of having dreams of going to, Wisconsin or Illinois or a school like that. How is it with recruiting in trying to, I don't want to say convince young athletes, but expose young athletes to what the experience can be at a Bryan and Stratton?
Yeah, so far, I can always rely on our success at this point, but, I look for those student athletes that have a high ceiling, and they say that they have a lot more to achieve and their development needs to grow. And that's what I kind of pride ourselves in. We're a huge developmental program. So you come to us for a year or two and you're going to be developed. You play in about 80 games in a year. So that's 160 games over 2 years between your fall schedule and your spring schedule. And we're constantly working one-on-one in small groups, which I don't think you necessarily get at the next level right away. So let's just take a D3, for example. They might have 15 to 18 contact days in fall with 1 day of 21 innings of games. I get 15 practices in before school even starts, because we report about 2 weeks before school even starts. And then we have 24 fall games. And another selling point for that is this year we're playing Michigan State, Purdue, Notre Dame, Indiana, Northwestern, Green Bay, Winona State, Parkside, and then the Platteville's and the Whitewaters of the world. So if you want to be seen by some of these colleges, you come here, develop and play some of these big dogs on their own stadium.
Dean, I think you may want to up your non-conference schedule. I mean, you can't keep playing all of these directional schools your entire career there at Bryan and Stratton. Wow, that is fairly impressive. How have your student athletes done moving on to the next level of Division 3, 2, 1, whatever the case may be? And have you had those athletes who had a great experience at Bryan and Stratton, gotten their degree and said, Coach, thank you, but now it's time for me to start my own professional career?
Yep. So we have basically our roster is probably built on both of those. We have part of our roster are student athletes that just want to play 2 more years. They're just not ready to give it up. They still have all the accolades, and especially in women's sports, women really want that degree. So there are a lot of them that will come and say, I'm going to play 2 years, I'm going to graduate, and I'm going to move on to the workforce. And then the other half is probably made up of the people that want to get onto that 4-year degree. And we've had success with that. We've sent players off to UW Green Bay, Florida International in Miami, UW Parkside, St. Cloud, La Crosse, Whitewater, Grand Valley in Michigan, and John Melvin in Orlando, just to name a few. So these student athletes are coming and they're seeing what it takes. Some of them probably were not highly recruited coming out of high school, and now they're playing at a D2 school with a full ride scholarship.
Yeah, that I think never gets undersold or oversold, maybe is the correct terminology, in the fact that you do have those gems in the rough, so to speak, that with the contact you described earlier, that you have the ability to develop and enhance a skill set so that then they are ready to move on to that next level, as you noted the number of schools that some of your student athletes have been able to go to.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's kind of the athlete that we recruit and we want the most, is the ones that want to put in the work and maybe have a little chip on their shoulder as well. And they come to us and they work hard and they see what we can do for them. And, the biggest accomplishment, and I guess the biggest accolade we can get, is almost every one of our student athletes that walk out the door always say to me, I wish this was a 4-year program, because they've enjoyed it so much.
That's probably one of the best accolades you could ever get, besides that one-loss record and trips to the National World Series. How has softball, Coach, in your opinion, evolved for the women, let's just say over the last decade, with the travel teams, what's taking place at the high school level, at your level, at the JUCO level, and then at Division 3, 2, and 1? It just seems like women's sports have exploded in the last decade or two, which to me has to mean what you're getting as far as recruitment goes is a higher level candidate, so to speak, even though in some cases you still have to develop.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, the just from the, I'm going on my 9th season here, and just from year 1 to now, just the athleticism alone, just all the programs that young women get involved in, just not necessarily on the field, but, strength and conditioning and things like that. I mean, I'm seeing stronger, faster women athletes than I've ever seen before. And it's incredible when you put that together and then you go and work on some fundamentals on the field, how good these players are. It's incredible. I mean, the state of Wisconsin alone, I try to stay in Wisconsin and Northern Illinois. I do kind of recruit the country, but, our hotbed is basically Wisconsin and Northern Illinois, but there are so many student athletes overlooked, and we'll go on and challenge these schools. A couple of years ago, we lost to Indiana 1-0 in 7. So we are getting those athletes, and it's just showing, 6 years ago, we probably get beat 23-0 to Indiana.
Sure.
But, it's just one of those things where, the woman athlete is just evolved, and it's incredible to see them play the game.
Dean, it was great getting an opportunity to talk with you. We're up against the clock. I hope we can do this again, because there are a ton more I'd love to discuss with you with regards to the program, women athletics in general. But I appreciate the time and you adjusting the interview schedule today to make this thing work.
Not a problem. We appreciate it, and go Bobcats.
All right. That's Dean Herman, the head softball coach at Bryan and Stratton, joining us on the Nicolay Law Talk and Text line. So, College Sports Weekly now comes to an end as the leadoff show for the Brewer doubleheader begins at the top of the hour. I get to join Charlie. He gets to take over, and I get to ride his coattails. Instead of saying we're back in 6-22, we're back in 6-23. This has been College Sports Weekly. Have a great weekend.